Dakota reservation. Chief leading eagle. Everybody was having a happy time. The automobile industry, for example, was booming. The cars themselves had certain features of a utilitarian order, such as running boards, driver visibility, and fresh air. The prices were right, too. The flivver was a thing of beauty. Henry Ford turned out his 15 millionth car. We knew the automobile age had really arrived. The earliest autos had become museum pieces. And Henry Ford, father of the American assembly line technique, sat proudly in his own first car, which he had made by hand. Production in industry was steadily increasing, and with came a steady rise in national income and in international trade. Under the guidance of Charles Dawes and Owen D. Young, considerable efforts were made to help solve such knotty problems as Europe's war debts and reparations claims. During such prosperous times, everyone thought of peace. The Kellogg-Briand Pact, negotiated to outlaw war as an instrument of national policy, seemed to many to make perfect sense in those days. If Coolidge was not wildly enthusiastic, it was probably because he realized that if the pact had been a good gesture politically, it was also a futile one. Good political moves, like the negotiation of the pact, were not to be lightly regarded at that time. The presidential campaign of 1928 had been a tough one. The Democrats had convened at Houston, Texas, and Al Smith was their choice for president. He was nominated by Franklin Roosevelt, who lauded him as the happy warrior. Al Smith was a fighter and a man of character, but the odds against him were too great. The Republicans had nominated Herbert Hoover, and Hoover was just what the country seemed to need. An engineer, honest and competent, who knew commerce and industry. That's what the people wanted, and on election night in Times Square, the crowds waited excitedly for the results to come in. Cheers were for 4 more years of prosperity with the unbeatable Republican ticket, Hoover and Curtis. Now it became Hoover's turn to ride up to the Capitol to take the oath of office. It seemed to most Americans as if the years of prosperity would go on forever, and the crowd before the Capitol was in a holiday mood as the ceremony got underway. Then the rain began to fall, but the spectators listened on quietly to Hoover's inaugural address. Another sort of storm was gathering that day, but it still hadn't broken when the Coolidges pulled out of Washington, headed for retirement.
Americans with a bankroll could make summer last the year round. Arthur Hammerstein wintered in Palm Beach, and so did Mrs. George M. Cohan, Mrs. Sam Harris. Irene Castle, famed as a dancer, added glamour. Flo Ziegfeld with his wife, Billie Burke, and his daughter, Patricia, went in for the nautical life. Most of Broadway showed up in Florida at one time or other. Helen Morgan was one of the standbys. She was a star of Showboat. The girls, and the men too, got a kick out of the fashion parades. And the dresses were, well, they looked fine then. You could always count on finding His Honor Jimmy Walker, Mayor of New York, in the middle of things. Jimmy was always dapper and lively, with a smile for all comers. The Florida press agent's ideas got wackier and wackier. Florida had no patent on wackiness. You could whip up a Charleston contest anywhere in the country. Along Broadway that the nightlife was really jumping. There were plenty of customers, the butter and egg men with bankrolls they were steaming to get rid of. You could always make more, make it in the market, spend it in the name band clubs. Speakeasies did a land office business. Texas Guinan with her gals kept customers
is really the sugar coating on the cake of trouble, and many a sucker has cut himself too big a piece of cake. You understand?
Didn't last forever. The time came when the ticker tape in the broker's office told a new story. It was panic. 16.5 million shares of stock sold in a single day. Sold hopelessly, desperately, at any price. The forerunner of depression and crisis. So ended the golden playtime of the 20s. But beneath the froth, it was a decade of great achievements in many fields of work, in science, in industry, in education. No one was wise enough to turn the peace and prosperity of that decade into permanent peace and prosperity. But the nation had lived for a few brief years in a new kind of world where there was happiness and peace. And if that brief world ended, rudely and abruptly, there was still left in its pattern the hope of an America of abundance and fun, of peace and accomplishment, to be created again in other go-round.